Mr. Siegel is an entrepreneur. He's a business executive in the entertainment and sport management fields. Most recently, and perhaps most notably, he's the Chief Executive Officer of USA Track and Field. He is also the owner of several companies, including Revolution Racing, which is a NASCAR team that partners with NASCAR in their Drive for Diversity program. So please put your hands together for Max. And welcome to the University of Florida.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Of course. So you heard this introduction, and you've heard a lot more laudatory introductions about your accomplishments in your career. The many things that you've been able to achieve. You're clearly one of the most visible and one of the most accomplished African-American businessmen and executives in motorsports. Not to mention your accomplishments of running USA Track and Field, achieving massive business success there, really focusing on the bottom line, the very famous $500 million contract with Nike. Given all these accomplishments, how do you link that back to the childhood, which in your telling of it was clearly a tough upbringing? The words that I've heard you use are chaos, drugs, and violence. Coming from that beginning with almost nothing to work with and achieving what you've achieved, how did you do it?
Wow. I talked about it a little bit today. Someone was asking me about goal setting, and I heard Coach Holloway. First of all, my faith is really important to me and has been the foundation for everything that I've done. My parents didn't go to college. They divorced early, a lot of drugs and alcohol in my house. And when I thought about what a better life was for myself, they were small goals. I didn't really know. I just wanted a stable household or a comfortable environment emotionally. I had a younger sister who I looked after, and so, I always said to myself, I want to do better so I can take care of her, and if I do this, and if I get the platform, I want to make sure that everything that I do makes it better for someone else, and they don't have to experience the same kind of chaos and confusion that I did. So for me, it started off just trying to have a better life.
Yeah, well, I suspect that a lot of people want to have a better life, and they think to themselves, I'm going to have a better life. But that's not to say that they necessarily succeed at that. Do you think that you had a particular strategy or a particular viewpoint or philosophy that might have helped?
Well, for me, the two things that gave me an excuse to not go home were sports and school. And so I knew from an early age that if I achieved in school, I'd have opportunities. Sports changed my life. It taught me a lot of things that I carry in the business right now. It gave me an opportunity to get noticed by colleges and academically. And so, I did two things. One was setting those kind of personal goals that I became a better version of myself, whatever that meant. But I had so many negative influences in my life. I tried to set objective goals where someone's opinion of me really didn't define who I was. So whether it was achieving a B+ or an A or saving $50 in the bank, I tried to set those kind of metrics in my life to say, okay, you're on the right path and you're doing a great job. Fortunately for me, my wrestling coach was a huge influence early on. My baseball coach was a huge influence. And then, neighbors and friends, and we talk about having mentors, and so many mentors may be your peers, people who really invest in you and believe in you and support you. So those were the things. And really, I think early on I decided that I was going to have to accept people for who they are and where they are in their life. And I tried to pull the positive qualities. So if I saw someone, my stepmother, for instance, who was abusive with alcohol, but she got up every day at 4 o'clock to go to work. That work ethic was something that I tried to pull out of that situation and, just let the rest of it go.
So I think I've heard you talk in the past about the importance of collaboration in your success and the insistence or the commitment you have to a positive attitude and wanting to work with people with positive attitudes. Do you think that those principles, I think I heard those principles in what you were just saying?
Yeah, we talk a lot in a formal way about diversity and equity and inclusion. And if you just take a look at where we are in the world right now, I mean, we have a global economy. I mean, the internet connects all of us. So as a human being and as a business person, it's foolish in my idea to not embrace all the rich things that people bring to the table. And I realized early on that you don't achieve anything significant or any success on your own. It does take collaboration. And so for me, as I ran into people, and I still do, that have their own agenda, which there's nothing wrong with that, I found that if you truly care about what's in it for someone else or what they're trying to achieve, then they'll invest in you. When I was young and I had my first job out of college, I had a boss, I had great experience, and I had a boss that I really had a hard time adjusting to. And, my mother, who was wise, told me to kind of understand that she was a human being and there were other things that were going on. And I found out during the course of that, I was thinking it was all me, but her father had terminal cancer. And there were things going on in her life which taught me that when you go to work every day, it's not just someone with a task, there's a human being that you're working with that have other issues. So, what I try to do, in addition to my job and leading, is being a good servant and supporting people and understanding not only what their mission was from a corporate standpoint, but how can I enrich their life on a personal level as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Can I shift the conversation just a little bit, because I want to come back to something you mentioned in that last answer. You mentioned the concepts of social justice and equity and inclusion. And as a race fan, I knew you first through your ownership of Revolution Racing and the work that NASCAR is doing. Do you see the drive for diversity as, how is it linked to this whole social justice concept? And do you think it's being effective? Is it accomplishing what NASCAR and you hope it will?
So I often say people wonder what a black guy with a Jewish name is doing in NASCAR. And the fact of the matter, I'm a recovering lawyer. And early in my career, I represented one of the greatest football players ever, the late Reggie White, Reverend Reggie White, who's in the Hall of Fame. And so I was Reggie's agent, and Reggie retired down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was on the global management team at Sony, and he called me and said, hey, he's like, there is a great opportunity. There's so many opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. And I'm like, you've lost your mind. There are no opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. But Reggie kept after me, and he became friendly with Joe Gibbs while he was down there. And he saw all those positive things that sport brings. I mean, it's a family sport. It's fascinating. People are passionate, and all the opportunities. Then he looked around and said, hey, you know what? I don't think people like us understand that you can be a crew member or a race engineer or an executive. It's not just about being a race car driver or a marketer. So we put together a group, and Eddie DeBartolo, who was recruiting Reggie, said, if Reggie ever wants to have life after football, call me. So we called, and we put together Ronnie Lott, myself, Reggie White, and we were going to buy a race team. And unfortunately, we lost Reggie on Christmas. He passed away. In the course of the meetings with all the team owners, I became more fascinated. I stayed in New York for about a year, and then Teresa Earnhardt called, and I think was intrigued by the entertainment background, managing all the intellectual property rights for Dale Jr. and Dale Sr., and working on film. So I was given the opportunity to be the president. I believe I was the first person of color in the history of that company with 600 employees. And so, for me, it was interesting because where we found a common ground was around the passion for sport. And then you start to talk about those things, family and what makes you happy, and you learn. So in the course of that, I noticed that Brian France and Steve Phelps and NASCAR, they were really looking to grow the fan base. And for me, I think that people were either skeptical of the focus or the commitment or the reason. And it evolved out of not just being socially correct or proper or the right thing to do to the business dictated as the culture changed and the fan base and trying to go younger in pop culture. And so this has been my 12th year partnering with them. I'm proud of the fact that three of our most popular young drivers in the series, Kyle Larson, Daniel Suarez, and Bubba Wallace, all drove for me, and we developed them. And 12 years ago, I think there were 2 pit crew members who go over the wall and work on the cars that were minority. We've placed over 50 at all different levels in the National Touring Series, and we've had our first historic women that are tire changers at the top level. So I can't really say enough about NASCAR's commitment and focus and the resources that they put into that. But the reality of the situation is it's a work in progress, you know, and the fact of the matter is I have partners that realize there's a lot of work to do. So it is being effective, but we have a lot more to do.
Do you feel like you're seeing it in the fan base? Are you seeing more fans of minority extraction or women fans for that matter?
I'm seeing more, but not at a level where I would claim that we have had success. I think that part of the challenge with NASCAR is because of the stereotypical perspective that people have of the origin or what they think about the sport is the hugest barrier for someone to even go try it. So, you know, we've tried to invite, I can tell you that I haven't had one person that I brought to a race in 12 years that hasn't walked away saying, this is fascinating, or I didn't really know. And the experience that they have when they get there is nothing like they imagine. So at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, I asked the media, I said, look, I'd like to invite you guys to come out and cover it and really get the experience and tell the stories that say to people like us that it's okay to experience and experiment with this. So I think once we break down those barriers and more people are able to engage with it, the fan base will grow.
Yeah, that's a terrific story. It's really encouraging. And I got to tell you, it sets me up for another question. If we go just next door to your role in USA Track and Field, you mentioned the issue of media in your last answer, and there have been conversations around sport organizations and social justice platforms. And I know that while on the one hand you're very famous for the work you've done in getting the association on a level footing financially, but you also have a reputation for caring about the athletes and being close to them. Sorry, long setup. Here's the question. Do you feel like the athletes in the USA Track and Field organization, do you feel like their brand management and their relationship with the media is a productive thing that is benefiting them? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, probably. So when I got out of law school many years ago, I worked for a firm and we represented.
So just FYI, this guy went to Notre Dame Law School and he was the first African American to graduate from Notre Dame Law School with honors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. As my mother says, that and a quarter will get you a phone call or whatever. But anyway, I think that what frustrated me early in my career is the Olympic movement and the Olympic platform during the time the Olympics are on is the biggest globally. And there's so many things that happen in that space from, you know, the pride, the competition, the inspiration, and track and field especially, you know, anchored the Summer Olympics. So the athletes would make, you know, incredible athletes, the best in the world, all these medals. And as a federation and as a business, we had a lot of work to do to get the kind of global respect. I think that one of the things that we continue to work on, and we're chipping away at it, but we're not close to where we need to be, is really helping develop the awareness and the brand recognition of our athletes domestically. My chief operating officer, Renee Washington, who was here, and I and our team, we fly around the world. And the kind of respect that we get globally and the reverence that our athletes have is amazing. And then many come home, some of the greatest athletes in the world, and it's off years and people don't even recognize who they are. And so for us, you know, part of what we want to do with producing content and, you know, lifestyle shows and placing them in things that keep them in front of our audience in off Olympic years are ways that we're trying to develop the brands domestically. So I think that they do not get the recognition that they deserve. And if it's the last thing I do, we're going to continue to fight to change it.
If anybody can do it, Max, I think you're the one. I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you so much for your wisdom.